Dr. Kate Sweeney. I'm the Director of Special Education and Student Services here in Tuckahoe. Tonight we're going to be presenting on the CPSE to CSE transition. We do have some wonderful staff from our Cottle Elementary School here to help us if anybody has any questions at the end. I'm so appreciative of their time tonight. Kristen, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Krista Miller. I'm a special education teacher at Cottle Elementary School.
Excellent. And we have Sabrina, who many of you know is our trustee CPSE chairperson.
Hi, everyone.
Excellent. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen and we will begin. All right, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. And here we are. So once again, welcome. So the goals for this evening are to introduce you to a few faces at Cottle, which we've done, give an overview of the CPSE to CSE transition, describe some differences between the CPSE and the CSE requirements, and talk about special ed supports and other supports that are available to children at our Cottle Elementary School. So your child has an IEP through CPSE. Now what? So some of you have already had annual reviews. If not, you will be having an annual review. And at that annual review, several things happen. One is you determine you're going to be exiting CPSE. So whether that means that your child is can be recommended to be declassified, or your child can be recommended to be referred to the CSE, which means they may need special education services when they transition up to our kindergarten next year. Okay. So in terms of transitioning planning, so what is going to happen at that last CPSE meeting? So again, you're going to be reviewing all of the progress your child has made. Any updated testing information will be reviewed. Input from teachers and parents will be reviewed. And there will be discussions about whether or not they require summer services or ESY, and whether or not to refer to the CSE for continued special ed services as they transition to kindergarten at Cottle. And there may also be discussion of what other resources your son or daughter may require as a general education student who may need just a little extra support. The chairperson can describe some supports available at Cottle as well. So if you get to the meeting and it is determined that your child no longer requires special ed programming upon exiting preschool, the child will recommend declassification. And when does your child be declassified? Well, the committee can say, okay, the child's recommended to be declassified at the end of this school year and does not require summer services. Or your child can recommended to be declassified at the end of the summer if they do require special ed services over the summer for ESY through CPSE. And why would your child be recommended for declassification? Well, as it says here, declassification, same as when your child was determined to be eligible for preschool special education services. If your child no longer exhibits a 33% delay in one developmental area, or 25% delay in two or more areas, then that would let us know that your child has made sufficient progress and does not require special education services to continue. And that's when the committee would talk about declassification. But what if your child's declassified and you say, but they still need some help and it's always nervous coming up to kindergarten? Help is available. So first of all, the staff at Cottle screen all of the students coming into kindergarten. Hopefully many of you participated in that on March 27th at our Cottle Elementary School. And just to remind you, children need to be registered for kindergarten. Separate from when you had to register them to receive CPS services, you have to register them again so that they can come into kindergarten. So please make sure that is done. And then we schedule screenings. And in addition, your child's coming up to Cottle. We have a robust RTI process that has been years in the making. And that what that means is, what that stands for is response to intervention. So should your child come up and they're screened and they maybe required some building level services, we can talk to you about that. Or they're screened and they're fine, but then they transition and they may need some extra services. Our RTI committee meets regularly and they review students and their progress and can recommend AIS supports or additional RTI supports in reading and math or whatever they need. So there are building level interventions for students. It's not just special education or nothing. And in addition, it's good to know that we are anticipating for next year, once again, providing integrated social and emotional learning lessons. We have a guidance counselor, Mrs. Silver, who pushes into all classes at Cottle and does social emotional lessons for all kids. And our occupational therapist, we are anticipating having this available again for kindergarten, be our third year next year, pushes into all kindergarten classes working on fine motor skills, because students just kids aren't holding crayons and pencils and playing with Play-Doh as much as they did years ago when they were younger. So we're finding that a lot of students need extra help with those fine motor skills. So our occupational therapy pushes into all kindergarten classes. So that's something that's a building level support that will be available. There are some students who may have health or medical needs, and you say, what if they don't need special education services, but they may need accommodations? So I'm going to describe the Section 504 plan to you. So Section 504 is a federal law protecting individuals with disabilities. And what it allows, in our case, our school to take a look if there's a medical or health need, and we can approve accommodations to level the playing field for them. So what does that mean? Your child must have a physical or mental impairment. For example, they may have visual impairment, they may have ADHD, they may have diabetes, and they may have those impairments but not require special ed services, but still need some accommodations. So that would fall under 504. In addition, that impairment must be determined to have substantially limiting one or more basic life activities. So if a child is coming in with anxiety, with an anxiety diagnosis, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have trouble learning. So if it does impact their learning, that's when you could refer to our 504 committee to take a look if accommodations are appropriate. So let's get into the gritty, the CSE. So I like to say it's like CPSE without the P for preschool. And there are a few other differences. So here is a visual of what I had been describing before about the possibilities at your child's annual review for CPSE. One is that the child can be determined to be declassified upon entry, and they can go into general education, and they can go in to receive building-based support through general education. Your child could also be recommended, instead of being declassified, can be referred to the CSE. At that CSE, to determine if they require special education services in kindergarten, your child can be determined to be ineligible or eligible. And if they are eligible, the committee will put together an IEP for CSE for kindergarten special education services. So who is at that CSE meeting? So similar to who was required to be there for your CPSE meetings, at the CSE meetings, we require parents, you know your children best, or a legal guardian. There is always a CSE chairperson. There's a psychologist, a special education teacher, a general education teacher, and then others might be at your child's meeting as well, such as a speech and language therapist or a translator if needed. So what kinds of things are you going to be looking at, and what are we going to be looking at to determine if we need to refer to CSE? We'll be taking a look at the developmental history closely, any updated psychological evaluations, educational evaluations, the classroom observation, any related services that your child receives. We'll be looking at those evaluations, speech, OT, PD, and progress in those areas. We'll be getting teacher reports and input for your child's current teacher who's been responsible for educating them this year. And of course, we seek your input. In fact, I always begin my meetings with my parents, asking them to share from a parent's perspective, how they think their son or daughter has done over the year. Your input is tremendously valuable and important because, again, you see your child and you know them best. A difference in CPSE and CSE is that when your child is determined to require special ed in preschool, there's a broad category called preschooler with disability, PWD. When they transition to CSE, the state requires us to further identify the area of disability. So possibilities that the New York State recognizes are autism, deafness, deaf blindness, emotional disturbance, health impairment, intellectual disability, learning disability, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairments, other health impairments, traumatic brain injury, speech and language impairments, and visual impairments, including blindness. So we really have to, during that meeting, there will be a discussion about what disability your child is exhibiting the greatest deficits in, that will allow us to categorize that and put that on the IEP. And that's different from CPSE. So once eligibility is determined and your child is determined to require special ed services upon entry to kindergarten, similar to the IEP that you have received through CPSE, several important categories will be talked about, discussed, and really determined. They will be determining present level of performance in areas such as academic, physical, and social. Expect conversation about special factors, behavior supports needed, assistive technology supports needed. There will be discussion about goals. What are the goals that the special education teacher and providers will be working on with your son and daughter, to give you an idea of the roadmap of what we'll be targeting to help your child close the gap and level the playing field for them. We will be talking about programs and related services required, and I'll get to that in just a minute to tell you about what's available at Cottle. We'll be talking about modifications and accommodations that your son or daughter requires, again, to level the playing field in kindergarten and allow them to have access to curriculum and instruction. We'll be talking about any supports for staff that are needed, and we will be determining if your son or daughter requires any special transportation. So all of those categories that are on your current IEP for CPSE, we'll be talking about those and updating those for your IEP for CSE. So the continuum of services at William E. Cottle, what are the supportive services available? We are very lucky in our district, being such a small district, to have such a range on the continuum of special education programs and supports for our students. The state requires that all students are placed in their least restrictive setting, because research consistently shows that students in their least restrictive setting, not pulled out, but when they're with their typical peers, when possible, do better academically and socially. So you'll hear that conversation. More is not always better. So the state really requires us to take a careful look at that. We balance the child's need to be with their typical peers with also what supports do they require in order to make meaningful progress. So that's why we have a continuum. We have going down the continuum in terms of a little more restrictive. According to the state's definition, we do have related services at Cottle. We have occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech services, counseling. We also have a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing who we've contracted with for a few students. So there's a plethora of related services available if your son or daughter needs them. And then moving down the continuum, we have an integrated co-taught setting for kindergarten, meaning that there is a general education teacher and a special education teacher in the room for all academic times of the day for our kindergartners who may require that level of support to participate in kindergarten. We also have special class. This is more for our students once they get into first and second and third grade. We do have a pull-out support for reading. We have targeted reading interventions. In kindergarten, it's harder to determine that they have a reading delay because they're still learning their letters. So that's when we would talk about the classroom placement. But just so you are aware, we do have those pull-out supports available as your child progresses through Cottle. We do have 2 different special classes for our incoming kindergarten students. We have a 1212 and we have an 812. And then furthest down the continuum, we have our out-of-district placement. When it is determined that the district cannot support your son or daughter with appropriate programs and supports, a very, very, very last resort is we would have to consider out-of-district placements at something like BOCES, where they have the ability to provide specialized programs, and that because they pull in students from all over our county. I am very lucky and blessed to be working in a district that continues to put resources to developing the programs in our district, and I do not believe we're recommending out any students to go out of district next year for our 2nd year in a row, which is a huge win for us because we want our students close to their community. So a little bit more detail about those programs. So the related services can be provided on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. It is typical that when your child receives related services in preschool, they typically get more related services in preschool than when they come over to CSE. The shift focuses to keeping them in the classroom as much as possible. And so it is very typical for related services to be decreased, not because the need is decreased, but because we are working on that more robustly in our 6-hour day in the classroom. The integrated co-teaching services, again, like I said, there'll be 2 teachers in that classroom for all academic periods. The 1212 special class, give you a little more information about that. That means there's no more than 12 students with 1 teacher and 2 paraprofessionals in the classroom. This class is really supportive of students who have significant learning disabilities, who may have some other health impairments, some attention deficit or executive functioning disabilities. But so that's a supportive program that can be considered. In addition, we have our 812 special class, which is no more than 8 students, 1 teacher, and 2 paraprofessional in that class. And that class is for our students who require a much greater intensive needs and supports that can be achieved through a lower ratio program. So it is, typically 2 students to 1 staff in that room because they have higher needs, and we're able to make progress in that lower ratio classroom. Okay, so that is all I have. I wanted to give some time for any questions that you have. Again, welcome to Cottle Elementary School and for continuing in the Tuckahoe schools. We do very much look forward to continuing our journey with you. There are many people, you'll see when you come to Cottle, there's many people on the team. Mr. Barash, who's our principal, apologizes. He was planning on being here tonight, but had a medical emergency with his child. So he wanted to send his greetings to all of you, and he can't wait to see you very soon coming up. And if you have any questions, I would open it up to the team. I see that we have 2 things in the chat. I can go to those. Okay, 1 question, do you have ICT for kindergarten? Yes, Kristen, you answered it. Excellent. We have ICT for kindergarten. This is our 2nd year being able to provide ICT, integrated co-teaching teams on every grade level at Cottle. So we're very excited to be able to support that again for next year. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns for us? No one's jumping in, and that's okay. So we look forward to seeing you again. If you came in for the screenings on Monday, fantastic. If you have not registered or come in, made time for a screening appointment, please get in touch with us just as soon as possible. Again, Sabrina Peduto has been instrumental in helping us organize that for our students. We look forward to seeing you at our annual reviews. You will see Sabrina and you may see Miss Miller. And if you have any questions or comments, again, I put my information on this. We will be recording this and putting it on the website. If you need to know, reach out to myself or John as a principal as well. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening.